That is true, Beverly. Watching the weather the other night, he called it the spring of deception. You know, he had the graph that talks about the first and second and third winters and you know, things like that. So we were in the spring of deception until last night. So, and winter has returned. Stacy and Raquel, I see you're joining us. Thank you. And for those of you who are logging on, we are working to the 2 o'clock hour, and I am thrilled with the presentation. So you're in for a real treat this afternoon. Anne, thanks for joining us. If you want to change your name, that'd be awesome.
Well, you're setting the bar really high there, Lori.
You know, what can I say? They're all good, but this one just really intrigues me and I'm looking forward to it. So I think we hold the record today for the third Zoom that we've all been on today. So
Lori, did you have to change your name on Zoom today?
I did. I always have to change it. So but anyway, welcome.
Right, because I didn't have to change my name.
Yeah, I don't know. But see, I just cheat and go into Zoom itself and click on it because I don't want to find my registration. Because I can only be organized for so long and then it's just a hot mess. If you want to share where you're joining us from today, we always like to know that. Just type in your name and your location in the chat box. We'd love to know where you're joining us from. What part of the state or outside the state of Nebraska might you be joining us from today? So we're operating out of Holdridge. Stacy, welcome. Welcome back. So thanks for sharing. Stacy's just about 1.5 blocks up from us. Shayla's from Benkelman. Thank you. We've had good representation in the past from Benkelman, so good to see that you've joined us. We'll wait a few more minutes for people to join us. I see you're all taking me up on that. Beverly is from Bertrand, of course, so she is one of our speakers. Erin is joining us from North Platte, but she lives in Brady and her husband grew up here in Holdridge. So kudos to him. I assume he was a duster at one time. We'll wait a few more minutes. The one thing Zoom has done is made us able to walk into a meeting and never leave our office. So glad that you are all attending and participating today.
I want to know if anybody's getting snow. Thankfully, we're not supposed to this time, but I know the northern part of the state might not be so lucky.
We were on a Zoom this morning that said that they were getting some snow, but I think right now we've kind of got overcast filtered sunshine, but just above, 33 degrees here in Holdridge. I don't know about you, but I'm done with snow for the year. Welcome to those of you who've just entered our webinar. We will begin shortly, so just hang out. We wanted to know where you were joining us from today. So if you'd like to enter that in the chat box, we'd be excited to know where you might be joining us from. Oh, it's 40 degrees in Benkelman. I just saw that. So, and Andrea from Norfolk said they're in a winter weather advisory. Andrea, you can just keep it up there. I am over winter, and so just keep it in your part of the state if you would, please. Lance, thanks for joining us. He's joining us from Ansley today. Oh, and we have somebody from New York City. Jay, thanks for joining us. Steve, North Platte. They're also experiencing some cold weather, and Norfolk is expecting 2 to 4 inches of snow. So no good. Okay, we'll give one more minute for everybody to join us. I see and hear some additional arrivals joining us, so we'll give them one more minute and then we will get rolling because we have a lot of great information being shared during our webinar today. I got to thinking, do you realize we're halfway through the first quarter of 2024? I'm kind of a numbers person, but we're literally halfway through February, and the end of March will be the end of the first quarter. So time gets faster the older we get. So, and I don't want to miss a minute of our webinar presentation today. So we will be getting started here in just about a minute. So a reminder to you to use the chat box if you have questions for our speakers. During the presentation, we will be asking those at the conclusion, but the speakers will also be watching that. So they might stop and answer a question during their presentation, but we will do our best to monitor those. So I just want to get started here and welcome each and every one of you to our February of 2024 HomeNE webinar. It's just crazy to think that we are halfway through the month of February already, but thank you for joining us on the HomeNE Statewide Learning Network. South Central Economic Development serves as the lead agent for the HomeNE program. HomeNE is designed for people from all across Nebraska, as well as even outside the borders of Nebraska. It's a network that is geared towards addressing housing challenges in rural communities. We represent all of the state, but especially the rural communities are the ones that are facing the most pressing housing challenges. We provide face-to-face as well as online opportunities, such as today, to foster interaction, engagement, and skill building for local leaders and people with a passion to address their local housing challenges. Today, we have 3 great individuals who are joining us. Beverly Hansen from the Bertrand Community Builders Group, as well as Sharon Heffley and Leanne Yoakum from here at the SCED offices. So welcome to the 3 of you, and thanks for being our presenters today. I'm going to turn it over to you here in a little bit, but before we begin today, I just wanted to kind of take all of you who have joined us down a walk of memory lane a little bit. I've had the opportunity the past couple weeks to just dive in and refresh my memory of HomeNE and just look at the history of HomeNE and how it began and where it started and where it's going. This morning, the SCED staff did a presentation to the other economic development districts here in the state about the HomeNE Learning Network. And I just want to share a little bit of that history that we shared with the group this morning with you as well before we begin. So back in the early days of HomeNE, whenever we did a webinar, we always touched on the purpose of HomeNE, and I've listed those, but there are really 5 purposes of the HomeNE Learning Network: to build a network of individuals and communities with a shared interest around housing, to provide a safe space. Sometimes it's hard to express to one another that we've struggled with a challenge in our own communities, but HomeNE provides that safe space of vulnerability to address and to talk with others about housing challenges. We also want to learn from the successes and struggles of each other. I am really serious when I say we not only want success stories, but we also want lessons learned from communities and from individuals who are seeking to address their housing challenges. We also want participants of HomeNE to take away new ideas or to see things through a new lens. I don't know about you, but when I get focused on one perspective, that's all I see. And sometimes it takes surrounding myself with other people to see new perspectives and a way through some challenges that I'm facing. And then we also want you to be inspired by HomeNE. Life is hard enough the way it is, and when you put challenges in front of you, specifically the housing challenges, we want you to walk away inspired from your participation. We also, in our earliest days of HomeNE, would share a map with participants, and I think this is the map from our 3rd webinar. So this might have been April or May of 2018, but we like to tell people where other people were joining us from. And if we were to do this map now, we would have over 200 stars on the state of Nebraska map. We've been joined by 203 communities as of yesterday during this 6 years of HomeNE. And we, as I mentioned earlier, we have somebody from New York City joining us today. So 9 or 10 states have also had representatives join us in the HomeNE Learning Network. And for that, we're very thankful that you find this to be a time and an opportunity to come together to talk about housing. So we also wanted to just walk down memory lane with you briefly because of a favor we have to ask of you. Excuse me, Sherry, would you go ahead? As I've walked down memory lane and revisited the history of HomeNE, one of the purposes is for some potential funding opportunities that we have for the Learning Network. So we'd like to hear from you today, and we'll be revisiting these. So don't panic if you don't get them all addressed or written down. But we want to know, as a result of your participation in HomeNE, what connections have you made as a result of participating? Connections with other individuals, maybe entities or resources. We'd also like to know from you what actions you've undertaken, what meetings have you arranged, what conversations have you held, what studies have you completed as a result of HomeNE. We also want to know maybe what some of the results that you've experienced as a result of HomeNE through those actions or the connections that you've made. And then what tools have you utilized or found beneficial? Maybe it's not something we've offered to you, but it's something that you've heard through HomeNE from another organization or community. So we will be revisiting these things at the conclusion of today's webinar, but we want you to enter into your chat box just some thoughts, if you would be so kind. Excuse me. So my apologies. I'm battling some cold. So anyway, and now I would like to turn it over in our remaining time over to our speakers today. Before they launch into their presentation, I would just like to ask them each to share a little bit about themselves before they begin. So Sharon and Leanne and Beverly, feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Lori. I'm Sharon Heffley. I'm with the South Central Economic Development District. I've served as executive director here for 18 years, and housing was not our first priority. We didn't begin talking about what are we going to do in housing till about 2014. Leanne?
Leanne Yoakum, and I'm the deputy director here, and I've been with SCED for 2.5 years, and I'm excited to just talk about the journey. That was one of the first projects I worked on when I started, and because I was learning the trust fund, and that's how I got to know a lot of the Bertrand movers and shakers. So I'm excited to share that, be a part of sharing that story.
Hi, I'm Beverly Hansen from Bertrand, obviously. I am a returner to Bertrand after living in Colorado with my banking career for 30 years. I returned in 2008, and I am currently on the Bertrand Community Builders LLC company, and also I was a founding member of the Bertrand Area Community Fund, which began in 2011. Just to list a few of the things that I'm involved in.
All right, thanks.
Perfect. Go ahead, Sharon.
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying perfect. Feel free to begin.
All right, I'm going to jump off from there then. We titled today's webinar, Right People, Right Time, Bertrand's Path to Progress. Bertrand has a history of community meetings, bringing people together to set priorities and establish volunteer groups to address those priorities. And, bringing people together and talking about things and saying, gosh, how should we do this? And who's involved and all that. It's not a sure indicator of success, but research shows that people who set goals certainly accomplish more of them than those who don't ever set them. So kudos to Bertrand. I just want to mention a few things that they have accomplished over the years leading up to this. You'll hear it again, but we believe that activity breeds activity. Bertrand hosted a town hall in 2006, 39 people participated. And some of the priorities out of that too were successful right away, community beautification and a community building. And they've solved things in interesting ways. Community building, they were able to upgrade the Ag Society's building instead of building a new facility. So really, again, kudos to them for utilizing what they had. And a couple things that were awaiting progress at that time were rentals and housing and the library. They had another town hall in 2010, and the priorities that came out of that, they wanted their own Young at Heart Senior Center. They wanted a library, and they wanted to do more with businesses. And from that, they've built a new senior center. They're no longer getting the meals hauled out from Holdridge, but they have their own board and all. And they were able to establish public hours at the school library. In 2015 or 2011, the Bertrand Area Community Fund was established. You'll hear more about that. And in 2015, we were able to do a community needs assessment survey and a housing study, and then we conduct a town hall. 21 participants said that their priorities were community engagement, and that included more opportunities with the rodeo, the parade, and the volunteers for that, which has been wildly successful. They wanted to work on businesses, transition, startups, buildings. If you've been in their downtown, they're one of the most vibrant towns of their size in the state. And housing, and they were talking investment group, rentals, and TIF. And that one took a little bit to begin to gain traction. In 2016, the village board decided to embark on the nuisance abatement program. And between 2016 and 2019, they assessed every parcel in town and did cleanup. And from there, they named their own code enforcement officer so that they could keep that program up locally. So that takes us up to a more recent time. In the spring of 2021, LaDonna Bennett, who is the director at the Bertrand Housing Authority, called me and she said, Sharon, we need more apartments. I don't know who else to call. We have only 1-bedroom units. They had changed so they weren't just elderly. And they said, if we get somebody with a child, they don't have a bedroom for their child. Somebody has to be on the couch and all. And I later learned that I was her last call. She had connected with several other resources, and she said, I didn't know you were my last call. I didn't know anybody else. So to me, it was spring. Trust fund was just closing. We've been reading up on that, and it really sounded like a good fit for the Nebraska Affordable Housing Trust Fund program. So I explained the process and kind of what the timeline was, that, hey, let's start taking steps so that we're ready by next year to submit an application. And we started meeting every month to talk about what's this going to look like, who else should be involved, where might this go. They had a preferred property right across the street. We met with property owner. It wasn't available. But just through continued conversations and bringing more people in, we found out that the trailer park was for sale. And we went to work negotiating the purchase of that. And in order to fund the purchase, that the trailer park, by the way, had been in the nuisance program multiple times. So it had one trailer left, and that person was on the waiting list to get into the housing authority. So it wasn't going to displace anyone if we purchased I keep saying we as though I was part of it, but we get to work with these projects enough that we do feel like we're part of it. So in order to fund the purchase, we contacted the Phelps County Development Corp. And those of you that know Ron Tillery know he was quick to act. He recommended, hey, why don't you apply for a loan? We have some funds here. And they were able to secure a loan that was forgivable at $5,000 per housing unit developed within 10 years. So the trailer park was purchased, and the village let the housing authority utilize their engineering firm, and it was determined that a 5-plex would be ideal on that lot. So at that point, that's about when Leanne came on as we were negotiating on that trailer park, and we said, guess what? Here's your first project. So we'll let her talk about that trust fund application.
Sure. And I was just learning about grants in general, but the trust fund was the one that I jumped in. And luckily it was the deep end, so I could swim. But I had to demonstrate need and we had to demonstrate capacity, and the Bertrand Housing Authority had already been managing an apartment complex of low income housing for over 20 years. So that was a good sell. But what we needed to do was to just update our housing study data because it had been since 2015. So we did some landlord surveys and employer surveys just to understand how bad is the rental need. And we really started digging into those numbers. And again, this is where the trailer courts were removed, and it served as an ideal location. And we thought we could fit 4, but weren't sure about 5. We were able to get a 5-plex fit onto this lot. This picture was just from a few days ago, so it's not quite pretty yet, but it will be soon. And hopefully we'll have bright blue skies and green grass when it opens in June. But what we decided was that 2 bedrooms really was the need that needed to be met. The other Bertrand Housing Authority property was all 1 bedrooms. And so we established the 950 square feet. And then we decided, you know, Bertrand, we looked at their income qualifications and we looked at the employers and what they were saying and who really was had a void of who needed to be placed. And we decided to go at 120% of area median income for qualified renters because we really felt like it was the ranch hands that are surrounding Bertrand, and they made a decent wage. And there was the first time teachers that could never find a home. And those are really the type of working professionals that we were trying to accommodate, as well as even some seniors and older adults that just wanted more space. So we were able to do the mix. And at this year, it was the cap was at 500,000. The subsequent year, they went up to 750,000, but this year it was at $500,000. And we estimated, and the project should be coming right in at 1.1 million. And we were able to do a split of 3 units at qualified income rate and 2 market rate units. So we have some floating units there. And this just shows you what the wages or what that area median income is for Phelps County in Bertrand. And it's just been a great success. But one of the things that I also needed was to quantify public input. And I had heard and I had learned that there was all this great visioning sessions and this great collaboration and trajectory and progress that was being made by the Bertrand Area Community Fund. And so that's when I reached out to Bev and I said, hey, I know you don't know who I am, but do you have some things that you can share from these great community vision sessions that you had? And lo and behold, they had these nice charts that were all gridded out, and housing kept coming up. And that is how I personally got to know Bev, and how this all started to kind of blossom into a new direction.
Thank you, Leanne. As she said, we had completed some visioning sessions, and we took a different approach to it. We started with the junior and senior high students at the school. That was our first group that we met with, and we asked them all kinds of questions about what they were proud of in Bertrand, what they thought they would like to have, and housing wasn't necessarily at the top of the students list, but it was adequate housing was included in their lists of needs and things that they thought would be good for Bertrand. And then we went on to the young adults, and the housing topic came up there, as well as childcare, obviously, for young adults, and things to do in Bertrand. And then when we met with the empty nesters, the same things were filtering to the top. And the senior citizens, obviously, they have been here for a long, long time, but they were also very proud of all of the things that the Bertrand community had done in the past, and they wanted to continue to move forward and be progressive, and readily said childcare, you know, if Bertrand is going to continue, we have to have things available for young people. And so they were very supportive, and said housing, obviously, if you don't have housing, no one's going to come to the area. So that's how that all came about. One of the first things that we were able to do was to give a grant to the Village of Bertrand for the study of the aquatic center, which the pool had been closed that year. And we were very happy to be able and pleased to be able to give them funds for that project. And then from there, we moved on to childcare in 2019 and 21. We held a couple of community sessions to gain input and to share with people in the community that at that point in time, there were 3 in-home daycare facilities and 1 other private daycare. And we learned that 2 of those people would be retiring within that year. And the 3rd one had said that she wanted to retire. And so we knew we were in dire need of addressing daycare. And so the Communities for Kids came and presented some ideas and some things that they could help with. And so there was a new community group that was formed with the assistance and guidance from Communities for Kids. And we are happy to share that the Little Vikings Daycare was opened in May of 23. And since then, an after school program for up to 10 children is available now. And second in-home site is scheduled to open in May. So that will give us 3 daycare facilities plus the after school program. So we'd accomplished 2 of the 3 things on our list. Moving forward, okay, let's tackle the housing. And that was about the same time that Leanne reached out to us. And so we readily agreed to host the community conversations to learn more about the housing status in Bertrand. Leanne, back to you.
Yeah, Bev, do you want to share a little bit about who you invited and why you invited them?
Sure. So we thought, okay, who do we want to come to this and who needs to be aware? We already knew that there were some new teachers that were coming into the school system and that there was not any housing available for them in town. So we included administrators, school board members. We asked some of the trustees to participate and gave them an invitation, as well as village employees. And then we reached out to other business entities from within the community, just so everyone that would have a good idea about what was happening in Bertrand and the severe need for adequate housing. And we were so excited and happy that that very first day, there were 26 people that were able to attend our first lunch.
I think it was because of the fantastic meal that you provided, but yes, it was a great group, but that just set the stage. I wanted to just kind of like lay the groundwork of who was sitting in these seats when we started. So we, through that process of preparing for the trust fund, the SCED staff had just dug into a lot of data and statistics. And then we had the employer survey data and landlord data to share as well. But one of the most stark data points that we shared that really, I think, shook those community leaders to the core was that, have you paid attention to your population sign? Look at the last 20 years. You have accumulatively lost 10% of your population. And that's something to be concerned. And coincidentally, if you look at your housing inventory, you have a very an aging inventory. You've got 57% that are over 60 years old. That doesn't appeal to the middle, that working class and the young professionals typically, especially if they're dilapidated and they haven't been updated. But also, did you know that there hasn't been a single new home built since 2008? And they're scratching their heads. I'm like, really? And then they start thinking about it and they say, well, somebody did this. Nope, that was clear back then. And it's amazing how time flies. And, you know, we had conferred with the village office who keeps track of building permits. And lo and behold, somebody had added a garage here and made an addition here, but there had not been a single new home. And so this really started the wake up call. We presented all these data points in that first May meeting, which caused a stir. And then the June meeting, we decided, you know what, we're going to take this a step further. And we had just brought on an intern here at SCED. She had done a previous presentation that was on small town building on HomeNE. But Becca, she decided, yep, we're going to tackle this vacancy map. And this map really caused things to stir up. And it was at our second meeting when we showed, did you know this is the number of vacant and unavailable homes that you have in your community? So we color coded it at the vacant lots. These are all infills. You don't have to look at doing a new subdivision. look at all of the opportunities that you have. There are 10 vacant homes, but more importantly, there's 22 vacant homes with no utilities. That's a lot of houses. So you're talking 32 homes that are sitting there taking up space and not producing anything for your community. And that could be where your teachers who only last 2 years because they're commuting from 20 miles away, that's where they could be living. This is where your ranch hands could be living, and et cetera. And then you've got a couple of village owned lots that they had made progress on, some of them through nuisance. And then you've got a couple of prime real estate that was being used as a garden. And maybe that could yield some different opportunities. So what came from this map is that they were just like, wow, we got to do something with this. We have got to share this. We've got to get the word out. We need everybody to know what's going on. So we summarized what the big hits were, is that there's not very many rentals, and there's a wait list for what we do have. And that's what I was able to show need for in that trust fund and really drive that home. And subsequently, we were able to show enough need that we were awarded because they just did not have enough rentals. But the homes that were for sale, they don't even hit the market. It's on who you knew, and you knew that somebody was leaving or that it was going to go up, and then it's just sold just like that. And sometimes it was the major employers that were buying it, so they had a place for their workforce. And that just look at the number of vacant, unavailable homes. When you're talking 10, 20, 30, that's a lot of undertapped potential. And that was all just gathered from various need sources. And again, those surveys. So they're like, yep, we got to do something about it. Guess what's coming up? The Bertrand Fair and Rodeo. It is the biggest event that we host in the year. Again, I say we, I'm not a Bertrand resident, but we've got to get this out in front of them. And why do we need to get it out then? Because there are a lot of returners to their community. Some of those vacant homeowners, they're the sons and daughters, grandsons, nieces and nephews of the extended family. Some of them have been sitting for 20 or 30 years. Grandma's in a nursing home, or even some family members deceased. They're going to be here for the rodeo. We want them to see that they're just one house is part of a bigger picture and part of a bigger problem. So we shared these big stats, and they had a QR code that if you wanted to learn more, that talked about the investment club that they're wanting to form and how they could be a part of the solution. And it really did cause a stir. And this is where I get to turn it over to what comes next. And this is the third meeting, and
Yep.
yes.
I put my mouse over the microphone and the mouse disappeared. So I was trying to unmute, and I have this issue where things aren't coming up on my computer today. They stay down in the toolbar, and I've had an issue for a few days now where the mouse disappears. So my apologies, but let's keep rolling. A couple things I just want to revisit. There was a lot of stir about the same time that the trust fund application was submitted in early May. People were calling the city. They were talking to us and saying, what? How much is this going to cost? And who's doing this and why? Some of what they heard was truth. Some of it was rumors, and it wasn't necessarily true. And so because Bev had told us that they were interested in housing, they just weren't sure what that right entry point was. You know, we said, hey, would you be willing to host these a lunch, and we'll invite people in? We weren't saying, hey, it's time for us to now bring the community. They need to know about this stuff. They were asking a lot of questions. And so we said, let's confuse them with the facts. And man, they responded, and they were driving things then. They were saying, we have to meet again. We have to meet again. And so by the time we had the third luncheon, that they were well attended, a lot of different people. Some were the same at each meeting. Thankfully, we had a nice assortment of the community fund board that each time they'd say, yep, we'll do another one without having to go back and call a meeting or whatever. And that was just a great resource to be able to offer lunch. And so at the third meeting in July of 2022, the focus was, we've identified the issues and opportunities. What are we going to do about it? You know, are we just going to go back to our jobs and say, gosh, that was good conversation? And they said, no, we aren't going to do that. They knew of the houses that needed to be brought back to life. They knew there were vacant, available, and unavailable houses and lots in their community. They knew there was a small parcel that was prime for a subdivision, and they could see a lot of infill opportunities. They were really interested in an investment club. They really felt like that local solution was going to be a good thing for them. So we were able to provide them some resources, such as the sample bylaws that Cliff Mesner has put together for investment clubs. We appreciate Cliff and all of his work on that. We've sent those out a lot. We were able to connect them to other communities that had investment clubs, and their stakeholders met with Cliff and helped determine what are our next best steps. And by August, the Bertrand Community Builders LLC was born. You can see the picture there of Scott Ford, one of the founding members, that is at their public meeting where they're talking about what they're going to do, again, using those posters that they used at the rodeo. So things moved fast. They opened it up to the public. They created a lot of interest, not just in their community, but in the region. We had calls from communities that heard about this on KRVN radio, on NTV, the local TV station, and in the Kearney Hub on the article there. And so Bev's going to tell you a little bit more about what Bertrand Community Builders has accomplished with their investment funds, or are they laying dormant, Bev?
Well, no, we're not laying dormant. Once we hit once the end of August hit, it was full speed ahead. We, as you said, hosted that first community session. We were really pleased. 54 people attended the first community open session to learn more about our project and our company. And we shared with them that, hey, for an initial investment of $1,000, you could become a member of the investment company. And then in January of 23, we would be increasing the annual amount to $1,200 a year or $100 a month and the source of the reason for the funding was to build enough capital so we could start purchasing some projects or houses and to identify a project and move forward, which we did. So in October of 22, we purchased our first house, which is on the screen here with a skid steer in front of it. That's a little 726 square foot bungalow. It had been vacant for quite some time. We have spent well over 2,000 hours of volunteer people, 20 to 30 people from the investment club and kids and everybody else helping out to demolish this house or take it down to the studs. We removed siding. The first thing we had to do was to haul out all the trash that was left in it. But needless to say, we've moved forward with that. We sent out bids to local contractors, giving them an opportunity to take over the project, to renovate it. And we tried to give all the local people an opportunity to participate in this first project. As of now, we are almost ready to finish it. The investors in October of 23 did approve an additional $26,000 to be put to use for finishing the basement in it. And so instead of having a 1-bedroom, 1-bathroom, utility room, kitchen, and great room, main level, we now have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home that will be ready for sale in hopefully the next 6 to 8 weeks. We're very proud of that. We were able to move the garage from another property that we subsequently purchased onto this site. And so we have a 2-car garage, and all of the concrete work for the garage and the sidewalks and things have been done by volunteers to keep the cost as low as possible for this first project. We're extremely proud of it. It has all new wiring, water lines, sewer lines, plumbing. Basically, it's a brand new house. So moving on then to our second project is the home here that the city had identified as a nuisance home several years before, as early as 2020. And it became available. The estate needed to sell this home as soon as possible. And so one of the investors from our company did purchase the home privately and to hold it, to secure it. So when we were up and running, we would have a second site to use. And the pictures show all the demolition. Once again, this is a proof that community volunteers coming together to do the demolition, the cleaning of the home and things like that. The main feature from this property is the fact that it does back up to the golf course to the west and has a beautiful view. That's the bottom picture on the bottom right there. In October, our company investors, they approved the moving of a home that had become available. Someone had shared with us there was a two-bedroom house at Johnson Lake, and so we were able to make arrangements and purchase this home, and then we began preparation of preparing it to be moved, and it was moved the end of October. And then in November we started site preparation for the basement of the home, and it now has been backfilled. The basement was completed just in January, and the garage floor was poured 2 weeks ago. And if all goes well, the moving company is going to be setting the house within the next 2 weeks, and so the contractors can move forward with then completing the remodeling of this. And so the main floor of this new home will be 1,654 square foot, and the basement is the same. The basement will be roughed in for a bathroom, unfinished family room, a storage room, and 2 bedrooms. And a beautiful view will be from the great room and kitchen area, which look off to the west to the golf course. We're really excited to this. If all goes well, our potential completion date for this will be late summer, early fall. So what's coming up next for Bertrand Community Builders? We've already moved forward, and we have selected a site to purchase 2 lots. And as soon as we sell one property, we are going to move on to start the third project. We were very happy and pleased to be working with PCDC and were awarded a $200,000 grant from the Rural Workforce Housing Fund. And we just can't wait. Our investment company has 64 members, and we accept new members on an annual basis, and things are going well. Have we made mistakes? You bet. We learned so much in the 402 Ninth Street project. Timing, just all kinds of things, and things we didn't think about when it's a group of people that really aren't directly involved in construction of homes or rentals or things like that. So it's been a learning curve. Our tips would be, if you're starting a project like this, one, incorporate a sufficient contingency plan in your budget for your project. Be sure to include funds for insurance, for setup fees from utility companies. Just really think through the whole process of what some of the things, other than what the contractor is going to be charging you for your project. Thank you.
Thanks, Bev. it is so exciting to see what Bertrand has accomplished. And I do want to mention just real quick that the 402 9th Street, they were able to utilize to borrow from SCED's Rural Workforce Housing Fund so that they could continue to accumulate capital, which allowed them then to partner with Phelps County Development Corp to get their own allotment of rural workforce housing funds. So it's been a great win-win for all of us in the region. But the thing, you know, they've been able to do is bring the right people together and figure out that it was the right time for things. And we talked in the beginning about the things that have happened over the years, that they have a pattern of convening people, prioritizing what they want to make happen in the community, and making that progress and doing it again and doing it again. And some of you might be thinking, well, yeah, they got lucky. They're lucky. They got all this going on. Well, two things. Bev will tell you, some days it doesn't feel lucky. It feels pretty chaotic and busy and a little stressful, but it is good. It's really good. But I will tell you that luck happens at the intersection of preparedness and opportunity. And if you've been on here very many times or been at gatherings, you've heard me say that before. So my question to all of you, my challenge for all of you is, what are you doing to prepare? Are you bringing people together over community priorities? And when you bring people together, I don't care if it's you and one other at a coffee shop, are you saying, wow, this is an important topic in our community. Who else should be here? Or is there somebody or someone that can help us move forward? You know, if it's as simple, I had somebody send a chat here. If it's as simple as maybe getting the bylaws to form an investment club, reach out and figure out where you can get that. Has another community done this? And I'm going to do a shameless plug for HomeNE and say, go to homene.us and search the webinars. Has another community done this? Might be a good place to find out. But the right people coming together at the right time is what sparks activity. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we believe activity breeds activity. Make something happen. People get excited. One of the things that wasn't touched on was early in this conversation in the summer of 22 about these properties and showing the map and all, that estate had 2 homes for sale. One had had a fire, and somebody bought that home and decided to redevelop it for their own home. There was another one that had been in the nuisance property. It had sold on like Craigslist or something, out-of-state buyer, got purchased by a local, had foundation issues, working on that. So it created other activity just talking about it. So bring together people, start these conversations, talk about what can it look like? How could this happen in your community? And honestly, I think only in hindsight will you know that it was the right people at the right time. I don't remember how that saying goes, but it's something about, you know, we didn't know we were creating memories. We were kind of just doing life. We didn't know those would be really important memories. It's really how it is. You don't always know, man, this is great. I've been at meetings where I thought I had the right people at the right time and I was wrong. It's not something you can see in your crystal ball, but keep taking that next right step and bringing more people and asking who else should be here, who holds information that we could use, and reaching out. There are so many people across the state that are willing to tell you how they did something, who they contacted, and even in other states. We've had some other states represented here, but kudos to Bertrand. But I think Bev would agree. Our challenge to you is, how do you make this happen for your community? So Lori, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Sharon, Leanne, and Bev. I do have one question that was entered in my chat box, and Sharon, I don't know if you have one or not, but this would be for Beverly. You referenced communities for kids as part of the growth in Bertrand, and I was asked that you maybe speak a little bit more about what communities for kids is all about, and how they helped in your situation.
Sure, I would be happy to. But before I address communities for kids, I wanted to build on Sharon's comment, was the fact that once it was announced that we had this new builders investment company and had purchased and started our first project, it just kind of mushroomed. As Sharon said, there were two properties from the one estate and one sold to another individual. But it just seemed to mushroom that once somebody started doing something and moving some houses, then others began to be moving as well. And so there's been a lot of activity in the last 18 months, which is a wonderful thing for our community. So just wanted to add that. I would like to share on the Communities for Kids. It is a nonprofit, and it is part of the Nebraska Families nonprofit group. Is that right?
Nebraska
Children and
Children
Families.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you. And they have helped Bertrand immensely. I know that they have helped other communities as well as to address their childcare needs. They have done wonders. One of their big projects was in Wood River, where they helped gave guidance and grants and things to the Wood River community for the conversion of the nursing home into a childcare facility. They walk you through the process of what you can do, what they can help you with, whether it's a childcare facility or they have, in our case, the people surveyed in our community, they all wanted to have in-home care providers as opposed to a facility. So that's the route we went. But they just are really super, super good at coming in and giving you guidance and helping you to achieve long-range goals for childcare.
Okay, thank you. So I had a question for Leanne, as some of you are maybe thinking of questions. Explain more about the vacancy mapping process. How can a community maybe do that on their own? What tools did the intern that SCED utilized? What's available to a community if they want to embark on doing their own vacancy mapping?
Well, interesting question, because there's the old school way and there's the newfangled way. And we had to do it the old school way, where we went to G-Works. You know, most counties in the state of Nebraska have a map and a visual, or maybe even the city or the village has one that you can use. And then we had to download it into Publisher, and we put in little blocks and color coded the blocks for the parcels. Based on, of course, working closely with the village clerk on identifying, well, which ones are which. That's how we got the information. But in today's society, really the best tool, if you have it available or at your disposal, is GIS. ArcGIS would be able to do this in probably a matter of, if you knew what you were doing, a few minutes, because you could upload an Excel spreadsheet and it would put the pinpoints, and you could have it color coded based on the status of the different lots. So I know that it's something that some economic districts in Nebraska already have, some of our colleagues, and some are looking to explore into that and expand ArcGIS capabilities. Because the sky's the limit, and ArcGIS has really gotten to be a lot more user-friendly from what we've learned, and it's all now web-based, and you can get nonprofit rates and that kind of thing. But you also have to have the time and the willingness and ability to learn how to use it. And so that's where a lot of people are at, kind of at the crossroads. But it can serve a lot of benefits, even for nuisance abatement tracking or the age of your homes, and you could just upload all kinds of things and do great mapping. But that particular map was done cut and paste style.
Okay. And it looks like Sharon has already put some information in the chat box that 88 of the 93 counties have a G-Works available to them that somebody can utilize. So thank you.
Also, I just wanted to add, I just thought of Merritt County. I saw Miles was on here. They've got a very savvy county assessor who knows how to use the G-Works and is willing to provide. She provided shape files for us. You might be lucky and have a county assessor that would be able to make a map for you. You don't know unless you ask, and you might have a county assessor that scratches their head and says, an ArcGIS, I don't know what you're talking about. So it could go either way, especially in rural areas, but that could be an opportunity to explore.
Yeah.
But also your
Yeah,
economic development district.
I remember when you guys created that and how powerful that visual was for the community and for people to see that. It really did, as you mentioned, bring it into perspective. Bev, quick question for you that came to mind. You had the initial investors, and then you closed that. You do open up at the annual meeting time, but is there a limit to what people can invest, or is it once you're a member of the club, how does it work long term? You've made your initial investment, you're doing your monthly dues. Tell me a little bit more about that process.
So the way we wrote our operating agreement was the fact that an individual was entitled to one vote, but they could have more than one share. We wanted to keep it equal for each family could have a husband and wife, but if they wanted to purchase more shares, each one from that family would only have one vote. We wanted to try to keep it even so everyone in the opportunity to participate and to become a part of this investment company. So if someone new wants to join the investment company, not only do they need to catch up at each year to whatever the amount of an individual share's worth is at that year in time. So $1,000 and then 1,200, and then if somebody wants to join the investment company, then they would need to catch up to the initial plus however many years into the program we are. We have not set any defined time for when we will adjust the amount of capital that an individual is putting into the company or anything beyond that. That's something that will be part of our annual meeting discussion once we have enough, what we think at the time, adequate capital that we can keep the funds rolling. And when we feel like the housing needs have been addressed, well, then we also have the ability to move on to other programs within the community, whether it be for studies of other things in the community or bringing in new businesses and things like that. We want to keep it open so we can provide big things for Bertrand. And I also, at this point in time, before we get cut off, I do want to thank the staff at SCED, because if it had not been for you and reaching out and sharing the status, we probably would still be just sitting here coasting along and complaining and not getting anything done. And so we are very, very grateful for you reaching out and sharing with us, and so much appreciate all that you have done to help Bertrand.
Well, thank you, Beverly, for those kind words. We do have another question for you. With the completion of your first project, do you anticipate that the Bertrand Community Builders would break even or make a little? What's your thoughts along those lines?
For the first project, I think that our goal was to break even on the first one. And I think we will accomplish that. Going forward, yes, obviously the intent is to make a little bit of profit off of it so we can begin to increase our capital and do more projects, but then start to pay a dividend to our investors.
Okay. And just to clarify, do you have paid staff, or are all of your workers and people volunteer work?
We are all volunteer.
Okay. You mentioned over 2,000 hours of volunteer labor on the first house, correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. So,
We
Hey,
learned
what
that
other-
we should keep track for,
yes,
for
yes,
succeeding projects.
definitely. It's a business all of its own, correct?
That is correct.
So, what other questions do you have as we begin to move towards our 3 o'clock hour? What questions or what was an aha for you today as you heard our speakers present? What really struck you in a new light?
You know, one of the things I want to mention, I want to comment on the vacancy map. I keep saying that we're going to blow up a big map, even if it's just off of GWorks. And instead of coloring the parcel, we're going to put real nice golf carts or maybe a fishing boat on there instead, because we really need to help people understand the value of the infrastructure sitting there. If you go to put in a new subdivision, you're going to be $40,000-$50,000 per lot. And so the value of having water, sewer, electric, all of that already there, it's much bigger than any of us realize when we see that vacant lot and we think, oh yeah, well, somebody ought to mow that. Well, it's really, really, really valuable. The other thing I just want to give kudos to was Evans Construction, when they came to do a demo in town, called another property owner who had a property that needed demolished and said, hey, I'm in town, I have my equipment, why don't you let me come over and do that today? And it happened. And so that activity breeds activity. The energy in the community is something that really can happen for every community. It's just amazing that people start they start becoming solutionaries. How can I help solve this, move this forward? And it's been really exciting to see.
I don't know that demolition would have happened had it not been for the other activity in the community. If it had been an isolated request, chances are it wouldn't have happened. So good.
Yeah.
So, okay. So last chance, any ahas you want to share with us? As you think about that, we've put the speaker's contact information on the screen for you. Feel free to reach out to them at the conclusion today or in the coming days and just pick their brain a little bit more about Bertrand and the wonderful story that's developing over there. I've got a feeling we will probably be checking in with them down the road again to update you on the progress that they are continuing to make. But so last thoughts. Otherwise, we will begin to conclude and just remind you that today's webinar, as well as other past webinars, can be found on our searchable HomeNE.us website. Those have been so valuable to so many of you, and we enjoy hearing the stories that you are continuing to go back and watch past webinars to gain information that you heard and maybe just weren't clear on or just wanted to hear again. So we greatly appreciate that. And then just as a reminder, at 3:10 today, roughly, you will be getting a survey from us, and we want to hear from you. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are investigating some possible funding opportunities for continued development of the HomeNE Learning Network. And so we're going to be asking you questions about connections made, actions taken, results experienced, and tools utilized through that survey. And we would just really appreciate your honest feedback. Don't have to write a dictionary or anything lengthy, but we want to hear from you so that we can possibly use that information that we gather through that survey and future opportunities that are possibly available to us. So in next month's webinar, I'm really excited for this one as well. I've known Emily for a long time, but Emily Bausch is the city administrator for the city of Plattsmouth, and she's going to be talking about different activities that are going on there, but especially the conversion of a former high school into affordable housing units. And I'm really excited to hear her, as well as maybe one or two others who might be joining her to speak about what's going on there in that city. So looking forward to that. We'll be talking about spring, hopefully, on next month's webinar, which is March 21st. So looking forward to that. So any final thoughts or questions or comments from our presenters today? Well, hearing none, I greatly appreciate all of you and the time that you've taken to spend with us today. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to seeing all of you again in March.